Starting us off with number 10 are drugs. This is honestly no secret at all. Hollywood is filled with drugs because contrary to popular belief, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a ton of drugs. If you don't want to take my word for it, take it from Dennis Quaid. The actor said he had dabbled in cocaine before becoming a star, but it was just for casual use. I love how that's so casual, like, oh, just cocaine for the casual use. In 1974, he moved to LA and his usage didn't get out of control until he started being on set for all these big mainstream movies. Quaid revealed that movie budgets disguised cocaine as petty cash to keep the drugs on set a secret. Moreover, it's freely given out on movie sets because it was just the norm back then and everyone was just doing it. He then shared his coke addiction caused his life to fall apart, and it was because of Hollywood. Another prime example is obviously Matthew Perry, who plays Chandler on Friends. If you didn't know that, are you literally living under a rock? Now, he was seriously addicted to cocaine for like 3 full seasons of Friends, which he doesn't even recall filming. I didn't think it was given out that sparingly though, but you know what they say, cocaine is the rich man's drug.
Moving on at number 9, we have the casting couch. So this is probably not the biggest secret anymore, but for quite some time it was. Basically, there's a lot of sleazebags in Hollywood. Some Hollywood directors or stars invite females over and, well, offer them roles in movies in exchange for certain favors. They call this the casting couch. It's absolutely disgusting. Like, they use their wealth and power to persuade innocent people. But sadly, a lot of people desperate for fame will agree to this. In an interview with GQ magazine, Megan Fox actually revealed the truth behind this. She said that numerous big Hollywood legends would invite her over for what she thought was just going to be like a meeting for a new opportunity. But when she got there, she realized their true intentions. She shut down several men throughout her career.
At number 8, we have Alfred Hitchcock. This one honestly pains me because I love his films, but he's such a misogynistic human being. Like, I'm like, ugh. Since his films emphasize a voyeuristic viewpoint from the male protagonist, most female characters were almost just like stock characters. They were remote, usually blonde, sexy, and in the end they always got humiliated. With films like Psycho, Rebecca, and of course The Birds, the man achieved a lot but was a total dick. He once referred to actors as cattle, which, I mean, you may be directing the movie, but they are literally bringing it to life. With The Birds, there was major controversy concerning Hitchcock and his treatment of the female lead, Tippi Hedren, who plays Melanie. After she was cast, Alfred became literally obsessed with her and would grab her out of nowhere, non-consensually, and touch her sexually. He stalked her throughout shooting and would isolate her from the rest of the cast while whispering explicit things in her ear. Tippi obviously shut down all advances, and he did not take that well. In the last phone booth attack scene, Tippi's face was cut by the glass pane, and she said she was misled about the logistics of the scene. Or did Alfred just do it on purpose as revenge? If that wasn't petty enough, he also signed her to a 7-year contract that restricted her ability to do work. This was actually never confirmed, but it came to light after he died, and even her co-star confirmed it. Apparently, he also taunted Tippi's daughter, Melanie Griffith, by giving her a wax figure of her mum in a coffin as a present when she was only 6 years old.
Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the Hollywood sign. So, a lot of dark things go down in Hollywood, as you probably realize by now. One of them was the suicide of Peggy Twistle, a struggling Hollywood actress. She had dreams of making it big in Hollywood, but sadly that didn't happen. She was a successful Broadway actor, but didn't have much success in the film field. Her one role was a 15-second appearance in the movie Hazel's Cousins. The pressures of being successful in Hollywood, along with the Great Depression, kinda got to her. On the night of September 16th, 1932, she climbed to the top of the H on the Hollywood sign and jumped to her death. Now, this tragic incident actually had a huge influence on current pop culture. In the 2009 film Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, the H in the Hollywood sign was made the entrance to the underworld. In Lana Del Rey's song Lust for Life, it starts with the lyrics, "Climb up the H of the Hollywood sign." It's assumed that these are both references to Peg's death.
Now, at number 6 is Jane Mansfield. To be honest, I had not heard of Jane until I started researching this video, but wow, she was actually gorgeous. She was an American actress, singer, nightclub entertainer, and one of the first Playboy playmates. She was in movies like The Girl Can't Help It and Too Hot to Handle, and a bunch of more movies that came out way before I was born, and I haven't seen any of them. Now, in 1967, Jane was in Mississippi doing some appearances, and on the 28th of June, the plan was to go to New Orleans for another appearance. So Jane, her driver Ronnie, her attorney Sam, and 3 of her kids got into the car and set off on their way. At around 2:30 a.m. on Highway 90, their car was speeding when it crashed into the back of a tractor trailer. The adults in the front died instantly, including Jane, but her children thankfully walked away with minor injuries. Now, apparently Jane was actually decapitated since the car had its top literally sheared off, and it looked like her hair was tangled in the windshield. But it turns out she just suffered from severe head trauma, as in her skull was crushed. I love how I was like, just severe head trauma, that's a lot. And the blonde hair was from the wig that she was wearing, apparently. It was this incident that propelled the NHTSA to start adopting an undried guard on their tractor trailers, which is sometimes called a Mansfield bar. Fun fact, one of her kids that survived was Mariska Hargitay, who you all must know from Law & Order Special Victims Unit. I literally used to watch her so much growing up, I was like, damn, she has a hard name. But then I realized people pronounce my name really badly, and I'm like, okay, at least my name's not Mariska Hargitay.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with The Cursed Project. The 1961 film The Misfits was filmed with old Hollywood stars like Marilyn Monroe, Montgomery Clift, and Clark Gable. So you would think it would be a big success, right? Not so much. In fact, this movie is said to be cursed. When filming, they experienced a number of setbacks and bad things would happen to them. Then, Gable died of a heart attack a few days after filming. Marilyn Monroe overdosed on set and then died barely a year later after the film was finished. And the night that the movie was airing on television, Clift died of a heart attack. That's so spooky. Like, all 3 stars died very soon after the production ended. So it's thought that this movie is somehow cursed.
And number 4 is Superman. No, I'm not talking about Henry Cavill, but I honestly really wish I was. No, I'm talking about George Reeves, who not only played Superman on TV in Adventures of Superman, he was also Superman in the film Superman and the Mole Men. And also producer Chris just told me there was also a Christopher Reeves who also played Superman. But what made George notable was the manner in which he died or got murdered. On the 16th of June 1969, the LAPD reported that George had been shot in the head at some point between 1 and 2 in the morning. The people in the house at the time were his fiancée Lenore and 4 other people. They all went out, some to a restaurant, whereas Reeves went to a friend's wrestling match. Around midnight he went to bed while 2 of the friends were downstairs just having a bit of a party. Apparently he came down and angrily told them to be quiet, then calmed down and stayed for a while, had a drink, and then went back to bed. All the guests were downstairs when a while later they heard a single gunshot, and by the time they went upstairs they found him lying across the bed naked with a pistol between his feet. It looked like he had shot himself, and the friends took an awfully long time to call the police, so they were so shocked and so very drunk. One friend claimed his fiancée was actually upstairs with him and came down after the gunshot, telling everyone to tell the police she was downstairs the whole time. Alright Lenore, you're a bit shady. There was no gunpowder on Reeves' hands, no fingerprints on the gun, the bullet was found in the ceiling, yet there were also multiple bullets in the ground, yet they all only heard one gunshot. On the flip side, George was also sleeping with Fixer and MGM VP Eddie Mannix's wife Toni at the time, but you'll find out about him later, he is a douchebag. Rumor had it that Eddie had mafia ties and found out about the affair and had him killed. So either his fiancée killed him, the mafia killed him, or he actually did commit suicide. I don't know.
Coming in at number 3, we have the mysterious death of Thelma Todd. At just the age of 29, Thelma Todd became a successful Hollywood star. That was until December 16th, 1935, when she was found dead in her car in Joel Carmen's garage. Joel Carmen was an actress and wife of Roland West, who Thelma had the occasional fling with. The cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. However, her car wasn't running when they found her, and it still had fuel in the tank. As a result, this has become a huge Hollywood secret. No one truly knows what happened to her. Was it accidental, or was it her ex-husband seeking revenge? Maybe it was her business partner or secret lover, maybe even her shady agent. We really don't know. Now, West did say that he locked her out, which made her seek refuge in her car, and so she may have accidentally killed herself from having the car running in a closed garage. But autopsy revealed that she had damage to her throat. One popular theory is that she died at the hands of West, who then staged her death to look like an accident. There's just a lot of secrets surrounding the case. Someone knows what happened, but to this day, we truly don't know.
Now, at number 2 is the fixer. Some believe any publicity is good publicity, but I mean, there's legitimately bad press out there. Like, if you're gonna get caught getting arrested for a DUI, or you go to jail for murder, that is bad publicity. You may have heard of this before, but in Hollywood, when someone gets to a bit of a sticky situation, they hire a fixer like Michael Sitrick to twist the negative stories into positive ones. I get why fixers are so important since celebrities get into shit every week, but sometimes they protect the wrong people. For example, back in 1937, Patricia Douglas, a 20-year-old actress, went to an after party for the MGM annual sales convention. And just imagine this party as a giant Hollywood frat party where people can legit do whatever they want because of how much money is just floating in the air. Either way, during the night, MGM sales exec David Ross, along with a friend, forced her to get drunk before sexually assaulting her. Patricia obviously wanted to press charges, and she did, but MGM got their fixer, Eddie Mannix, who I also mentioned beforehand, got him involved, and he made sure David's studio was never mentioned during the scandal. That in turn ruined Patricia's reputation, and Eddie somehow also got a portrayal in Hail Caesar, which is some sick kind of karma after ruining Patricia's life and God knows how many more.
And in our number 1 spot, we have The Poltergeist. This 1982 film has been scaring people for years, and not just from its creepy storyline. No, the film itself is cursed. In fact, it has been named the most cursed franchise in Hollywood. Brace yourself. It's about to get creepy. So first off, the skeletons used in the rainy pool scene were real skeletons. Yeah, apparently it was cheaper to get real ones than to make fake ones. So that's probably how the film became cursed. Then while filming a scene where a character gets choked by a robot clown doll, the actor actually got choked by the doll. Steven Spielberg thought that he was just doing a really realistic performance, but then noticed that he started to turn purple. That's not all. Multiple actors from the movies died tragically either during or after filming. Dominique Dunne, who played the older sister in the first movie, got murdered right after its premiere. Then 2 other actors died from cardiac arrest, and Lou Perryman, who was Pugsley in the movie, got brutally murdered by an ex-convict. So yeah, too many freaky coincidences for the film not to be cursed.
Starting us off at number 10 are award shows. Now, I don't think this is a secret by any means, but maybe not everyone knows that award shows in Hollywood are extremely corrupt. If you want to win an award, maybe best film, best newcomer, best whatever you want, it's not going to be your raw talent and effort that's going to win you the title, it's going to be the amount of ass licking that you can do. For example, back in 1968, everyone thought that the Golden Globes were chosen by a poll of correspondents, but then the Federal Communications Commission outed them and said it was actually based on internal politicking amongst the board members. Let's just think about it for a second. Back in 1981, Pia Zadora won Best Newcomer for the movie Butterfly. Who the hell is she, and what even was that movie? No one remembers because it wasn't a good performance, but why did she win, you may be wondering? Because her husband paid off members of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. It's actually been publicized that groups, individuals, and board members are corrupt. They accept gifts, holidays, money, favors, you name it, in exchange for nominations and wins. So it's not that Leonardo DiCaprio took that long to win Best Actor, he probably just refused to participate in all the corruption. And this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. I haven't even spoken about racism and unfair representation within nominees. But that's gonna be a long video and I don't have time.
In our 9th spot, we have Charles Harrelson. Now, you may be like, who is Charles Harrison? The name doesn't really ring a bell. Well, he is actually the father of Woody Harrelson. But what a lot of people don't know is that his father was a cold-blooded killer. I know, it came as a big shocker to me too. So Charles Harrelson was an American hitman and organized crime figure. It's said that he was responsible for the deaths of at least 20 people. In 1979, that is when Charles committed his biggest kill of all time. He took out a federal judge by the name of Judge John H. Wood Jr. He was paid $250,000 to kill off this judge. It was because a drug dealer was about to be sentenced by this judge, who was known as Maximum John, because he always gave out really harsh punishments to drug dealers. So he got Charles to knock him off. He then spent his life in solitary confinement until he died. But before his death, Charles said that he was involved in JFK's assassination. Crazy. But I'm just glad that Woody went down a much better path than his father.
At number 8, we have Keith Richards. So if you live under a rock or are too young like a Gen Z, then you probably won't know who Keith Richards is. Now, Keith is an English singer-songwriter who co-founded the Rolling Stones. He was in the rock band as a guitarist, secondary vocalist, and co-principal songwriter, and as a rock star, the man did a lot of drugs in his lifetime. But the creepiest, scariest thing he did was revealed in 2007 during an interview for NME magazine. Richards was asked what was the strangest thing he ever snorted, and he replied by saying, "My father." Like, excuse me? He continued on by saying, "I snorted my father. He was cremated and I couldn't resist grinding him up with a little bit of blow. My dad wouldn't have cared. It went down pretty well and I'm still alive." This man snorted his own dad, and I don't really know what to think of that and do with that information. I mean, he is Keith Richards, so I mean, he is a living rock legend, but should we just let him get away with that? I don't know.
Making our way down the list at number 7, we have The Animals. Of course, all movies that feature animals have to have a disclaimer that says no animals were harmed in the making of this film. But most of the time, that's a big lie. Animals often do get injured on set. In the 1939 film Jesse James, there's a scene where a horse runs off a cliff and into a lake. Well, that horse was actually forced to do that and ended up drowning. Of course, that was way back in the day, and there wasn't as many restrictions when using animals in films. But nowadays, it still happens. In 2013, a series of emails got leaked between American Humane Association colleagues. These colleagues were monitoring film sets. One email read that the tiger in Life of Pi almost drowned, but he went on saying that he just downplayed the incident. Then it said that 27 animals died on the set of The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. Dozens of marine life were killed during Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl, and 4 horses died during the production of HBO's Luck. These are just some examples. Films legally have to have that disclaimer on their films, but it doesn't mean that it's true.
Coming in at number 6 is The Mafia. Now, apparently Hollywood has huge ties with the Mafia, which is shocking, but as the series progresses, it's not really that shocking at all. Now, the Mafia seems to have their claws in literally everything. Not even art is safe anymore. Nothing is sacred. Now, apparently this mobster called Mickey Cohen ran the Hollywood underworld in the 50s, and so a lot of crime units would invest money in certain films to make their dirty money clean. That, my friend, is good old-fashioned Hollywood case of money laundering. Everyone kind of wins if you think about it. A movie gets the funding that it needs, and the bad guys get away with their crimes while remaining rich. Who said Hollywood had morals anyway? They don't. Actors like Leonardo DiCaprio, Christian Bale, and Casey Affleck have all been suspected of money laundering as well. Just when you thought they were safe, they weren't.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Prison Life. Some of your favorite Hollywood stars might have had a life of crime before becoming famous actors. Now, some of these came as a huge surprise to me. For example, Mark Wahlberg. In 1988, when Mark was 16 years old, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison after assaulting 2 Vietnamese men. On that day, he got in a fight with the men, yelling racial slurs at them before knocking one of the men unconscious with a stick, and then he punched the other. It was said that these offenses were unprovoked. But in 2014, he met with the victim, his wife, and his daughter and apologized for his past acts. He also released a statement saying that he isn't trying to cover up his past. Instead, he wants people to remember it, to show them how everyone is capable of turning their lives around. Then we have Tim Allen. Before Tim Allen was the star of Home Improvement and Pixar's classic family-friendly movie Toy Story, Allen actually spent time behind bars. In 1978, Allen was arrested for attempting to traffic more than 650 grams of coke. Now, he actually would have served a lifetime in prison, but he avoided this by giving police information about other dealers. Tim Allen, though, who would have thought? Certainly not me. He seems so innocent, but he's not.
Filling at number 4 slot is Oscarexia. I don't even need to get into the fact that society, and especially Hollywood, has not only set such a high unattainable standard for women and their bodies, but it's a vicious cycle since the women in Hollywood don't even have those bodies. They're either starving themselves for it or are getting heavily photoshopped with or without their consent. For example, back in 2013, right before the Oscars, Jennifer Lawrence admitted she had been starving all day and was very hungry. Naomi Watts further confirmed that when she dubbed the whole thing Oscarexia, which means starving yourself throughout award season because you know your body's going to be scrutinized by literally everybody. Actress Eden Share brought up this treatment called slim wrapping that they do before award shows as well. Basically, a technician wraps your body fully, and I mean toes, neck, wrist, everything, in 15 to 20 tight ace bandages that have this cloudy mineral solution on them. Then you're meant to jump on a trampoline for 50 minutes, and that's meant to make you lose weight. It's simply ridiculous and unattainable. Not even the women Hollywood are trying to sell to us that have those bodies have those bodies. It makes sense. Listen to it again.
In our third spot, we have the stuntman. Being a stuntman would be pretty cool, except for the fact that it's a very dangerous job, and they often get badly injured or die during films. First off, the highest paid stunt doubles make about $250,000 a year. Meanwhile, the actors get millions per movie, and they're the ones risking life and limb. It's sad, but there have been tons of on-set deaths over the years. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double got hit by a stage explosion. He was taken to the hospital and suffered an irreversible neck break. Now his arms and both of his legs are fully paralyzed. A stuntman in the Avengers had a chunk of his scalp torn off, and Bruce Willis's stunt double fell 25 feet during a stunt. Then just a couple of years ago on set of Deadpool 2, a stunt double died after being in a car crash on set. But you hardly hear about these stories in the media, which is so sad.
Now at number 2 is Jack Nicholson. This one is wild, and considering how big of a star Jack Nicholson is, I'm like, how is this not bigger news? So Jack grew up in Neptune City, New Jersey, where he lived with his sisters June and Lorraine and their parents. But in 1974, Time magazine did a lot of digging and found out Jack's sister June was actually his mother, not his sister. Mind blown. Unless everybody knows this and I'm the only one that doesn't know this. June was only 17 years old when she became pregnant, and she wasn't married, so her parents agreed to raise the child as their own, with June and Lorraine acting like his older sisters. So his parents were actually his grandparents, and his sister Lorraine was his aunt. Now in regards to his dad, his biographer is guessing it was most likely June's manager, not her actual husband. Other sources claim June didn't even know who his dad was. By the time Jack found this all out, his mum June and his grandma had already died. The actor claimed the reveal wasn't as traumatizing as people could have thought, but I would be pissed to know my real mum died without ever telling me the truth about that. I'm pissed. I'm not even Jack Nicholson.
And in our number 1 spot, we have the Black Dahlia. The murder of aspiring American actress Elizabeth Short is now said to be Hollywood's most famous unsolved murder. The Black Dahlia is the nickname given to Elizabeth Short after her death on January 15, 1947. She was found dead in a vacant parking lot. Her body had been cut completely in half and drained of blood. The killer was never found or caught. Of course, over the years, people have confessed to the murder, but still, no one has ever been arrested for it. That's what makes it such a big and scary Hollywood secret. Everyone wants to know what really happened to her and why. Starting off this countdown, we have the divas. Sometimes when you're rich and famous and used to getting pampered, it all goes to your head. You start off as someone who would do anything to get a role in a big film. But once you're already up there, you stop trying and maybe develop a bit of a diva attitude. Now, there are several celebrities that are known for being divas, and as a result, no one really wants to work with them anymore. They ruined their reputation. First off, we have Katherine Heigl. Apparently, she's one of the most hated actors in Hollywood. So for starters, on set she has complained about wardrobe issues, she has refused to get out of her trailer to film, and apparently she questions the script every single day on set. Then in 2008, she said she didn't want her Emmy nomination for her role in Grey's Anatomy because she felt like the writing on the show was bad. Another one that shocked me is Ben Stiller. Oh, I love him, but apparently he's whiny, demanding, and terrible to work with. And then Julia Roberts in the 90s movie Hook was also a diva, and the director, Steven Spielberg, even named her Tinkerhell. She played Tinkerbell, so Tinkerhell. It's funny. Good job, Steven.
Coming in at number 9 is discrimination. Now this one is no secret by any means. It's been given a lot of media attention in recent years, but that doesn't make it any less scary. Take this in. In the history of the Academy Awards, only one woman has ever won for directing, and that was Kathryn Bigelow for The Hurt Locker back in 2008. Still, that happened over 12 years ago. Surely we progressed forward as a society and industry that we aren't still that sexist. And sexism and gender equality isn't the only form of discrimination the industry has. There's also huge discrimination against people of color. Only one African American in the history of the Academy Awards has won an award, and that was Jordan Peele for Get Out. That award alone has only ever nominated 5 women and 5 African Americans. It's shocking. And it's good to note that I hope people realize that including black nominees doesn't necessarily mean they've solved diversity. What about South Asian nominees, East Asian, Latin? I could go on. Back in 2016, 96% of decision makers in Hollywood were white and 87% of them were male. Forget winning awards, even roles in movies lack so much diversity. The majority of roles and lines are given to white people and mostly just men. In 2016, only 31.4% of speaking characters were women. This is such a problem in the industry, and I don't think people realize how serious it truly is.
Moving on to number 8, we have Elijah Wood. Several years before the Me Too movement exposed big Hollywood names, Elijah Wood actually came out and addressed Hollywood's predatory problems, especially towards young stars. He exposed specifics of Harvey Weinstein and other big Hollywood stars. He also said that as a child he was never allowed to go to Hollywood parties because people of power would take advantage of the young stars there. He said, and I quote, "If you're innocent, you have very little knowledge of the world and you want to succeed. People with parasitic interests will see you as their prey. What upsets me about these situations is that the victims can't speak as loudly as the people in power." But no one listened to him. He tried to expose them and stop these disgusting things from happening. Instead, he got boycotted by major studios because of this. Like, hello, he tried to warn everyone and make a change, and he got in trouble for it? It wasn't until years later that Weinstein and everyone else got exposed and cancelled.
Filling at number 7 slot is Charlize Theron, who has the same birthday as me, so I just love her, and yes, I found that out when I googled celebrities with the same birthday as me when I was like 12. Now this South African beauty is known for her versatile acting with roles in movies like Monster, Hancock, Mad Max, Fury Road, and more. But her backstory in early life is a lot darker than people know. She grew up near Johannesburg with her mum Gerda and her dad Charles. Her childhood was rough because her dad was a huge alcoholic and would threaten Gerda and Charlize whenever he was under the influence. Charles wouldn't hurt her, but he would physically attack her mum. One night in June of 1991, he got angry and fired shots at both of them. During that altercation, Gerda ran and grabbed her own handgun that she had kept hidden in case of an incident like this and shot back at him. Her shots killed him while Charlize watched it all happen at the tender age of 16. Thankfully, it was looked at as self-defense and Gerda never faced any charges. This one was kept so under wraps and it was done so well. I've seen so many of her interviews and movies and never once have I heard about this.
Making our way down the list, number 6, we have the publicity stunts. I mean, there's no shocker here. If you want to get the public's attention back on you, all you gotta do is something extravagant. Maybe dye your hair, get the paparazzi to take an embarrassing photo of you, or in this case, date and break up with another big star. Stars do this all the time. They will get together just to promote their new movie or show or song together and then break up at a time that's convenient for them. This attracts a lot of attention and the movies or shows or whatever fare way better. For example, people think Kim Kardashian's marriage with Chris Humphries was just all a sham. Or Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn. I didn't even know they dated. That for sure was a publicity stunt. No offense, but how does Jen go from Brad Pitt to Vince Vaughn? Doesn't make sense. Another example would be how Anna Faris and Chris Pratt broke up just a month before her book launched. Impeccable timing. Now, what's scary is how half the time these celebs have no say in this. They're forced into doing whatever their managers think is best for them, even if that means dating someone they have no interest in. They literally get stripped from their own free will.
Coming in at number 5 are child stars. Honestly, this is sad because there's only a handful of child actors that didn't burn out or just have their career die the second they stop being cute. Having that much attention on you, that much responsibility and fame at such a young age really messes up your psyche. Child actor Martha Plimpton made her film debut at 11 years old and said when children's lives become all about external validation, that can set them up horribly. Because what's adorable when you're 12 isn't when you're 25, which is very accurate. She went on to say when you stop getting calls about roles and auditions, you start thinking how you can replicate that high, and so you do everything you can to stay in the spotlight. That may explain child star Amanda Bynes' behavior over the past few years, Lindsay Lohan's, Justin Bieber, even Miley Cyrus when she went through that whole phase. If anything, the only unproblematic child stars I can think of are the Sprouse twins or the Olsen twins. I mean, yes, they're a bit coked up and all, but other than that, they seem fine. What is it with twins and being fine? It makes sense that these stars try to get attention any way they can. Child stars are exploited as soon as you put them in the spotlight, whether they're being treated well or not. A brain that young just isn't able to cope with that much attention, and it shouldn't be. So I feel like child stars should definitely just not be a thing. Stop it, you greedy parents.
In our 4th spot, we have the murderers. Some of your favorite Hollywood stars might just be cold-blooded killers, which is spooky when you think about it. Here are some famous actors that have sadly taken the lives of others. First off, we have Matthew Broderick. On August 5th, 1987, Broderick crossed into the wrong lane and collided head-on with another car. The 2 women inside the other car were killed instantly. In 2015, Caitlyn Jenner rear-ended a car, which got sent into oncoming traffic. The driver was struck by another car and died. Then we have Phil Lewis, or as we all know him, Mr. Mosby from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Well, before his role, he struck a car while drunk driving and killed the other driver. He was convicted of manslaughter and driving under the influence and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Who would have known? But I'm sure all these actors feel super guilty for taking someone's life.
Filling at number 3 slot are writers. It's always actors and directors getting the credit for everything, and yes, admittedly they play a massive role in all of it, but there would be nothing to direct or bring to life without the writers. Writers in the industry have been undervalued and underpaid for decades. It's so bad that since 1960, the Writers Guild of America has walked off the job 6 times just to get studios to renegotiate writers' pay, but they claim a film hasn't made any money when it has. That's what Paramount did with the 1988 film Coming to America, which made $288 million at the box office. Studios do this so they don't have to pay their writers net profit, so the writer of that film, Art Buchwald, sued Paramount and won. He got $900,000 in settlements. Mel Gibson, who directed The Passion of the Christ, withheld $75,000 from screenwriter Benedict Fitzgerald, and thus he was credited as co-writer. I could go on, but the point is that there are way too many people in the industry that don't get treated right. That's all I'm gonna say.
Coming in at number 2, we have Natalie Wood. On November 29th, 1981, 43-year-old actress Natalie Wood was found dead floating face down in the Pacific Ocean. She was wearing just her nightgown and socks. So a couple days prior, Natalie, her husband Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and yacht captain Dennis Davern headed out on a yacht. Little did she know that she would not return home. The thing is, no one knows what really happened to her. Some say she slipped off the deck and fell into the water, while others are convinced that Wagner or Walken have something to do with it, or they at least know what happened. One theory is that Natalie and Christopher were having an affair. Wagner found out about it, got mad, and pushed her off the yacht. Wagner seems to be the prime suspect, but many people think that Walken knows exactly what happened. I mean, he barely even talked about the case, and on the rare occasion that he did, he would call it an accident. And he was absent from the documentary about her. I mean, he was on the boat. He should have been interviewed for the documentary. I don't know, I'm getting the vibe that he knows what happened and feels guilty about it.
And finally, at number 1 is Scotty Bowers. Now, this infamous gay US Marine worked as a Hollywood pimp from the 40s to the 80s, and apparently this man would set up all the Hollywood stars with whoever they wanted. Being heterosexual was all you could be back then in the public eye, but Scotty would let the actors choose whichever sex they wanted to be with, and apparently had a menage a trois with Lana Turner and Ava Gardner. Scotty was working as a gas station attendant at a gas station close to all the Hollywood studio lots back in the day. LA. He got his start sleeping with actor Walter Pidgeon, who then spread word about him and the money started rolling in. Scotty then expanded it to a trailer with beds and glory holes and so on, and he apparently set up Katharine Hepburn with 150 gorgeous brunette women. Studios and agents pressured all their talent to be straight, that what other outlet did they have? Rock Hudson was literally forced to marry his lesbian secretary Phyllis Gates. Apparently Bauer slept with so many stars but had never seen any of their movies. He even had his own wife Betty and a daughter, but was so busy in the brothel he would only sleep at home a few times a year. Eventually the petrol pump slash brothel became way too well known, which meant a police raid could have occurred and people could have been arrested. A documentary about him came out in 2017 and Dylan McDermott even portrayed him in the 2020 miniseries Hollywood. Now that's something I gotta see. Starting us off with number 10 is Little Women. Okay, so I have the book, but I've yet to read it or watch the film. All I know is that one of them dies, and that's only because Rachel ruined it for Joey and Friends. So why I'm talking about Little Women right now is because this one's actually about Joan Bennett, who played Amy March in the film. Now Joan has been represented by Jennings Lang for 12 years, and as an actor myself, it's really hard to find an agent you want to stick with for that long, so this was special. On the afternoon of December 13th, 1951, Joan met the VP of Sam Jaff agency about an upcoming TV show, so she met up with Lang and the two drove off in his car. A few hours later, her husband Walter Wanger saw her parked car there and thought it was odd. When Joan came back and got into her car, Lang leaned over the window to speak to her, and Walter, seeing this, thought they were having an affair. He walked up to the car and shot Lang twice, and when Joan saw it was her husband, she told him to quickly leave. Lang recovered and Walter claimed he shot him because he thought he was breaking up their home. Surprisingly, he only served 4 months in jail and they stayed married. I don't know how her husband thought she was cheating on him with her agent of 12 years, but it makes more sense now that I'm saying it out loud.
Alright, coming at number 9 are babies. Love a little cheeky fat baby, don't we? Now it can be hard, it can be easy to be a mother in Hollywood. Hard because you're shooting a film at the time, or the fact that the tabloids will body shame you if you don't get that pre-pregnancy body back, but also good because at least you have a ton of money to spoil your kid with. Now, if you could already tell, old Hollywood was dark. Like today, way more women in the industry have suffered than men. Starlets back then were encouraged to not get married as long as possible, and under no circumstances should they get pregnant. But screw that, love is everything. When huge actresses like Bette Davis, Judy Garland, Joan Crawford, and Lana Turner got pregnant, they very swiftly got abortions because their studio bosses encouraged it. I'm using the word encouraged lightly. By encouraged, I basically mean they were forced, otherwise their careers would be in shambles and their agents would leave them. That is horrible.
At number 8 we have the mobster. So I know I mentioned in another video that the mafia has a huge role in Hollywood, but this one isn't about all that. This one is a love story. Now at the end of the 1950s, mobster Johnny Stompanato started dating actress Lana Turner, and the two had a tumultuous and abusive relationship. He would beat her and once drugged her before taking naked photographs of her without her consent. It got so bad that when he realized Lana and Sean Connery were such good friends, he stormed the set of Another Time, Another Place and threatened him with a gun. And that got his ass deported. Now a day after the Academy Awards, Johnny went to Lana's house and they started arguing and it got very heated. He threatened to kill her, her mother, and her daughter, as well as breaking each and every one of their bones. Mid-argument, Lana decided enough was enough and broke up with him. Now her daughter Cheryl was in the kitchen while all this was happening, and she grabbed a knife and ran to her mum's defense because she was scared he would kill her there and then. As Johnny was opening the bedroom door to leave, he apparently walked into Cheryl's knife and was stabbed in the stomach. They called the ambulance, but he was dead by the time they arrived. And upon interrogation, Lana begged police officers to put the blame on her, not her daughter, but to no avail. Cheryl was arrested but not charged since it was a justifiable homicide. There was also a major conspiracy that Lana had actually been the one who stabbed him and that Cheryl took the fall. And also, how do you just walk into a knife? Surely when you open the door you're looking in front of you and you're like, ah, there's a knife, let's not walk into that.
Anyways guys, coming to the number 7 spot is The Cover. John Huston was an American director, actor, and screenwriter who made legendary movies like The Maltese Falcon, The Misfits, The African Queen, and more. But you know, as brilliant as people can be, everyone has their flaws, and John's was that he worked hard and played harder. He was an alcoholic and a massive player, but then again, who wasn't? Before he made his directorial debut, John was grinding hard trying to make it as a screenwriter. Sometime in the 30s, John John was drunk driving and he hit dancer Tosca Hulin, killing her instantly. He was absolved in court, but evidently the event had scarred him so much that he left Hollywood for 5 years and moved to Europe until 1937. A huge controversy at the time was that it was actually Clark Gable who had hit Tosca, but MGM fixer Eddie Maddox paid John to take the fall. Damn it, Hollywood can be so dirty.
Now at number 6 is the age gap. Now Jerry Lee Lewis, who I'd heard of but didn't really know anything about, was kinda dusty if I'm honest. And cut me some slack, my parents weren't even born in his heyday, how would I have even known about him? Now what threw his career into the gutter was the fact that he married his cousin Myra Gale Brown in 1958. But the scandalous part wasn't that they were related, because apparently that can be sidestepped. No, the scandalous part was that he was 22 years old at the time and she was 13. And in terms of the whole cousin thing, technically she was his first cousin once removed, as in she was his cousin's daughter. Myra even said, "We kept thinking every year, every 6 months that it was going to go away. They're gonna stop talking about it, and it just didn't happen." But it brought me and Jerry very close, and we had 10 incredible, wonderful years together after that. Firstly, I didn't even know it was illegal for a 13-year-old to consent to marry anyone. What is that about?
Alright, coming in at number 5 is the X-rated film. Joan Crawford was a legendary actress, signed with MGM, acted for over 6 decades. What more could you want as an actor? Oh yeah, to have no skeletons in the closet with that much fame. Joan was not that lucky. In 1935, MGM was blackmailed into paying $100,000 so multiple pornographic films of Joan would be destroyed instead of released. I mean, you gotta start somewhere, right? Everyone has an OnlyFans today. The only snag in all of this was the fact that Joan may have been a minor when she appeared in these films. And apparently it was her brother Hal who was behind the blackmail, and he even threatened to release her sex tapes mere days before he died. How did he even get his hands on his sister's sex tapes? Very creepy. I mean, we'll never know the truth about what really happened or if these tapes existed, but Crawford denied ever doing explicit films in her memoir.
At number 4 is The Feud. Okay, yes, I know there have been and forever will be countless feuds in Hollywood. May it be over a guy like with Angelina and Jennifer, maybe it's over attitude like with The Rock and Vin Diesel, or maybe they just don't vibe with each other like Matt Damon and Emily Blunt. Well, I could list off the many documented instances of Frank Sinatra being a total douchebag. I'll let you guys find those stories in your own time. Or maybe I could do like a top 10 scary times Frank Sinatra was scary. Nah, that doesn't really have a ring to it. Anyway, in 1955, while shooting the musical Guys and Dolls, Sinatra and Marlon Brando were not vibing. Brando had started trying to incorporate method acting into his work, and Frank told him it was crap. He also started calling him Mumbles because of the way he spoke, which is outright just childish and petty. Come on, Frank Sinatra, my parents and I expected more from you! Brando got his revenge in the end by intentionally blowing takes in a scene where Sinatra had to eat a bunch of cheesecake. Doesn't sound super lethal, I know, but it did make Frank have a breakdown during which he threw his plate and broke it. Not very professional, Mr. Sinatra.
Okay, coming in the number 3 slot is the action star. Now I know when you think action movies, a few names automatically come to mind, like Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Vin Diesel, etc. But before Tom Cruise and even before Pierce Brosnan, there was an action star named Wallace Reed. And googling pictures of him, he almost looks like Mortimer Goth from The Sims. Anyone else getting that vibe? Just me? Okay, now during the silent film era, Reed starred in a lot of movies with his actor-director dad. He was famous for doing his own stunts like a lot of action stars do now today. But all that came crashing down in 1919 when he was filming The Valley of the Giant. During filming, he was critically injured in a train wreck and sustained a 3-inch scalp wound. But since the show must go on, he was put on morphine to help the pain so he could continue filming, and that slowly turned into an addiction. And keep in mind, this was happening during the 1900s, when rehab was as big as scandals murdering your own brother. So the studio hid the issue and tried to hide his addiction as well. But with addiction, hiding isn't helping it at all. The addiction got so bad that the studio sent him to a sanitarium. By this time, it was far too late because Reed's withdrawal symptoms led to him having a heart attack, which ended up killing him.
Now at number 2 is the king of rock and roll. I didn't know Elvis personally, obviously, but I was highly offended when I first found out he wasn't a natural brunette. Like, how dare you impersonate us like that? I'm shocked. Now, despite literally having it all, the fame, the looks, the talent, the fans, Elvis still harbored a lot of insecurities when it came to the bedroom. He only wanted to sleep with girls who had no experience, so there would be no added pressure on him to perform. And by no experience, I mean mine. He would ask his managers to collect girls who were of that age or younger, and then the deed would get done. And yes, this is illegal, and it was even then as well.
Finally at number 1 is the final boss scandal. Now, at the time, this would have been a scandal to end all scandals. While filming the 1935 movie Call of the Wild, the lead actor Loretta Young and Clark Gable took a major fancy to one another, which resulted in an on-set, off-set affair. Ooh, I mean, have you seen her? She's drop dead gorgeous. I would want to have an affair with her too, are you kidding? But that isn't what happened. It wasn't a love story, it was a 34-year-old Gable being infatuated with a 22-year-old Young, which ended up in him raping her, and now she was screwed. She didn't want to come out with it and risk ruining her career or Clark's. She knew if she went to 20th Century Pictures, they'd force her to have an abortion, and as a devout Catholic, she didn't want to do that, so she hid the whole pregnancy and went on holiday when she began to show too much. In November of that year, she gave birth to Judith, who she put up for adoption. For the next year and a half, she was moved from place to place before Young went back to adopt her. And despite going to all that trouble, many people didn't believe it. The child had shocking similarities to Gable, and everyone just assumed the two had been stupid and had a kid. She never came forward with her rape, and the family stayed silent until both Loretta and Judy had died. Holy crap, that's a crazy story.